USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Hey, difference makers. Welcome back to A World of Difference, where we celebrate the power of our unique stories to create change. Today's guest is someone who's rewriting the rules of career success for an entire generation. Georgi Enthoven is a globally recognized speaker, Harvard Business School MBA, and the debut author of Work That's Worth It: The Ambitious Professional's Guide for a High-Impact, High-Reward Career. This book is the roadmap for purpose-driven professionals who want to do meaningful work without burning out or selling out. Georgi's work blends social and environmental impact with serious career momentum, and she's on a mission to help you make your 90,000-hour career count, whether you're fresh into your first job or in the middle of a major pivot. This episode is packed with practical wisdom to help you build a career that actually feels worth it. We talk about becoming a disruptor for good, aligning income with impact, and what it takes to truly redefine ambition in today's world. So whether you're listening on your morning walk or on your way to that job that you're still figuring out, stay with us. You're not going to just be inspired, you're going to be equipped. Let's dive in. Hey friend, let's talk. If you've been feeling stuck, uninspired, or just plain over it in your career, this is your wake-up call. It's time to stop waiting for that right moment and start making moves, because no one is coming to rescue you. If you want to check out the Mastering the Career Pivot, my brand new masterclass is designed to help you take control of your career, pivot with confidence, and land a job you actually love. This isn't some fluffy follow your dreams nonsense. This is real strategy to get unstuck and take action now, right now. Here's what you get. 1 hour of video training with me, breaking down the exact steps you need to take. 1 hour or maybe 2 hours, depending on your process, of self-paced exercises to map out your career pivot plan. A free career pivot guide to walk you through the process. A clear, actionable roadmap so you can stop second guessing and start making moves. And if you want to go even deeper, you can grab the Pivot Package, a powerful set of tools, including a detailed workbook and 3 must-have spreadsheets to track your job search, networking, and applications like a pro. And let me just say, if you're going out there expecting to just apply for a job, the first job, and get it, maybe you're one of those people and maybe you do. But if you're like most of the rest of us, you get a job based on people you know. And statistically speaking, that's true, as well as in my own lived experience and career journey. So networking is really a huge part of it, but a lot of us don't know how. And so a spreadsheet where you can track that, break it down, figure out what to talk about. I have some sample interview questions, or you can do informational interviews. There's so much there in the Pivot Package that is part of my own journey that helped me when I did a career pivot several years ago. So here's the deal. This course will save you hours of frustration, second guessing, and aimless scrolling on job boards. Not helpful. You don't have time to waste, and your future is waiting. So let's get after it. Go to loriadamsbrown.com/career pivot and sign up for Mastering the Career Pivot today, because your next chapter, it's not going to write itself. Hi, Georgi. It's great to see you, and I'm really excited about our conversation today about your book and the difference you're trying to make in the world. So a very warm welcome to our community here at A World of Difference.
Thanks, Lori, so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, first off, I want to get to know you a little bit more. I've read this book that you sent me. Thanks for the advanced copy of Work That's Worth It. It's a very interesting read, and it's going to give us such a good conversation today. But I wanted to start off with a little bit about learning about who you are when it comes to your travel personality. So curious to know, what is your travel personality like? Are you a planner, an adventurer, a culture seeker, or maybe something completely different?
Yeah, I love this first question, and I think it's probably pretty insightful. So I really love to experience an equivalent of a Sunday night in wherever I travel. So I like to really meet people and have authentic conversation and to get to know people in a non sort of event, once in a lifetime kind of situation. That's fun too. But what I really crave is just meeting people and having an equivalent of like a boring Sunday night, having a lovely, deep conversation on a sofa together, sharing a meal.
Oh, that sounds incredible. And it sounds like you really like to go deep with people and their cultures, which I picked up on. And as I read your book, you talk about not only career and work, but life outside of that. And so I would love to know your thoughts on this. Your first chapter is about how the average career spans 90,000 hours, which when you put it that way feels like a long time, but that number is both daunting and really motivating. How should that awareness really shape how we approach our careers, especially for those young ones who are just starting out?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Before I started writing the book, I came across this figure in the Harvard Business Review that the average career is 90,000 hours. I had been working, had gone to Harvard Business School, working after, and I'd never heard that number. I never even thought of what it was in total. And so when I read that, it really struck me of what an opportunity we have with those hours. And what if we use those hours for good? What if we had a plan behind those hours, like a big picture, versus just take it from job to job, which I think most of us otherwise do, is think like 1 or 2 jobs ahead. Where do I want to be? But what if we had like a theme for those 90,000 hours that really was something that would make us proud and we would want to be known for? So that is the opportunity. And I think it's funny because on my website, I have like a quick calculator that you can calculate how many hours you have left. And I hear all different things of like, oh my God, how am I going to get through all those hours? And then other people think, oh, this is really motivating because I don't have enough hours left. I think when you think of it as you may have a lot of hours or not enough time left, but how are you going to spend those hours and how can you be intentional with it? It becomes more interesting. And so I think being able to take the higher view and say, of my whole career, like what am I going to make with it? And then of course you have your feet in the ground and you've got day-to-day decisions as well, but that you're looking at it from both points of view.
I love that. And I love your little countdown on your calendar because it reminds me of the principle. I think it's Stephen Covey, one of his 7 principles, begin with the end in mind. And when you can have the picture of how you want to finish well, then it really does make each day, each hour an intentional effort of what it is you're doing with your career, with your work, what kind of impact you're making. And I know that really resonates with this audience because we're difference makers. We want to make a difference in the world in our little corner of it, even if it's just our little neighborhood or raising kind humans or leading our small but mighty team to do really great work in the world. And you also talk about being a disruptor, but a disruptor for good. So in a world where disruption is often associated with tech, I work here in Silicon Valley. This is a word we use quite a bit. We even give a Disruptor award I sit on the How Women Lead board and we gave a Disruptor award last year. It was incredible at our ceremony. It's a really valued word and role, but we often associate it with tech or maybe market dominance. And you're encouraging people to become disruptors for good. So what does that look like in practice for some of our younger audience that's starting out? Maybe they're 25, 35-year-old professional. How can they start and be a disruptor?
Yeah. I mean, well, let's think of Greta Thunberg. She is a young activist who really has a really clear idea of what's important to her and what she cares about in the world. And she is going after what she cares about and paving the way for her career journey. And when we think of her, we think of an activist, a disruptor. And it's so interesting that often in today's world, to do the right thing means you are an activist and disruptor. And that is what came up from a lot of the work that I did when I was researching the book. And those are the words that people were using, is it requires disruption. And it just feels maybe a little bit sad and surprising that is the case, but that is also, I think, the idea of feeling rebellious and going against the grain is something that young people really are willing to do and often enjoy doing. And that's a time in their life where they want to explore alternatives. And so the idea of it being a disruptor is more exciting than a change maker.
I love that. That really resonates with me as I look at in my own workplace and across the generations and what it was like when I was in my teenagers and early 20s starting out my career. You do look sometimes at the systems, the institutions that have a mixture of good and bad and want to be a change maker. I think the other demographic that I would say really probably resonates with that are some of my friends who are perimenopausal or postmenopausal women. They're sort of getting their time in the spotlight, well deserved, because it was something we didn't talk about for a really long time. At least I didn't grow up hearing women or men talking about it as much. But we're seeing some of the Gen X generation as they're hitting those years start to really talk about it. Some research coming out about it. How, I guess some of the thoughts are when women start to lose estrogen, then you start to think differently about the systems and the structures. And that actually think often of I went to the Forbes 3050 conference for International Women's Day a couple of years ago in Abu Dhabi, because one of the young women I mentor got Forbes 30 under 30. And so she invited me to go with her as her mentor. And I got to meet these incredible Forbes 50 over 50 women. One of them, Amy Allison, became a friend. We started doing a mastermind together. She started She the People. And it just the admiration I began to have for these disruptors for good, and realizing when you get to a certain age and you're a little more free, maybe kids are leaving the home and going to college, and you're doing this shift in your body where you're thinking differently and maybe more clearly about some things. Then that's a disruptor time too. Have you observed 100%. That? Is that something you found in your research at all? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a Gen X woman, and I have also noticed about perimenopause and menopause of our generation of women is just so comfortable talking about it that I think just that is a change. But you're exactly right there. You have to disrupt what is the status quo, and the status quo has been to keep that private, that there's some shame with it. And our generation of women, luckily, have decided that there is no shame, and we need to share tips and secrets and the best practices. And so absolutely, that's a form of disruption.
It's incredible to watch, actually, because as you mentioned, it did seem to be cloaked in shame. But isn't that odd? Because it's something half the world goes through, right?
Yes.
And so I do think that it benefits everyone when we take it out of the category of shame, bring it into the light, study it, be curious about it, and actually find that there's some advantages, right? There's a lot of actually books being written about that and people speaking about the advantage that women have in business and work and all kinds of industries in this phase of perimenopausal, postmenopausal type of thinking where you have a lot of innovation happening, a lot of disruption. I'm just thinking if I'm on a board and I'm looking for someone to come bring some innovation and disruption, I'd be looking for that demographic myself right now.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, which I hope in my book I can save some young people some time, but it takes a long time to get to know ourselves and to know what we really care about in the world. And I think, especially for girls, have conditioned with a lot of shoulds. You should be, well, actually both genders are positioned one way or the other, but especially for girls, are told to be caring and nice to people at the expense of maybe what they want or care about personally. And so it takes years to sort of get to your own inner truth. And that, I think, in my generation of women that are now like approaching 50 or in their 50s are feeling incredibly authentic in who they are. And so I think that takes a long time, but the younger generation have a lot more information. And I think that's in one way that social media has been really helpful. The millennials really changed mental health for the workforce. Before them, I think people didn't really share much with what was going on with their mental health. And again, shame was associated with it. And now, thanks to the millennial generation, it's completely normalized. It's okay to take a mental health day and to talk about it. And I really do believe that this next generation are going to do the same thing, but for the environment. And so it's exciting. And I think change can happen, but it does require some disruption.
It is exciting and it does require disruption, and people don't like change typically, especially too much of it at once, which we're kind of seeing right now with a lot of the geopolitical shifts and tariffs and that type of thing in business. And it is wearing on people. All the more reason to have those mental health days. Thank you, millennials. And I'm seeing some jobs. I work in talent development, and I'm seeing some jobs of some companies here in the Bay Area where they give a certain amount of mental health days as you're applying. It's on the job description. This is how many mental health days you get. And so I think those shifts are benefiting everyone. It's really helpful because after all, we're just human. And I think the more we lean into our humanity and have this very human-centered approach to leadership as we partner with AI and let the robots be the robots, and then lean into who we are, but don't force ourselves to be robots, because that doesn't work out very well for us as humans. But I'd love to talk about this, combining income and impact. This is something you talk about. So you make a strong case for aligning income with impact. Why do you believe this isn't just a nice to have, but a necessity for professionals who want to actually thrive in their careers today?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it's something that I feel very strongly about. And in researching the book, originally the book was called 90,000 Hours for Good, and I sort of had the epiphany, you've got 90,000 hours, now how do you use those for good? And quite quickly I ran into a roadblock, especially for ambitious people. You can't tell them to not make money. They won't make that choice. They won't go and, in quotes, do good. They may do it in their last chapter in retirement if they get there, but they won't do it for the majority of their 90,000 hours. So that's the first category of people. And then the second is are lots of people who, and this is how I started I wanted to start my career, is I wanted to do good in the world, but I couldn't find opportunities that met my ambition. But I interviewed a lot of people who, what I call the unrewarded do-gooder, and they do incredible work in the world, but they burn out really quickly because they are under rewarded for the work they do. And what happens is we lose those really kind-hearted people, and they no longer get to have the impact that they really wanted to have. And so often what they do is they switch to a category which I call the uninspired achiever, where they go into the corporate world and they climb a corporate ladder and they fit in the doing good piece on the side. And that is fine if it works for you, but what I realized is there has to be an option where people can do both, and that meaning that they can have a significant contribution they want to make to the world and be compensated for their work. And I look at compensation more holistically. Salary is a piece of that. Your income is a piece of that. And what's interesting, Lori, is I really needed these role models when I graduated from college, even from business school, and I didn't have a place and a source to see people who were doing this. But now that I am focused on this part of the world where people are interested in income and impact, I do not have a hard time finding interview people on my own podcast that are sort of income impact oriented. And I also interviewed lots of people in the book and share their stories. It is not hard to find these people. They exist. What we're doing, though, is giving a false choice to young people and saying you either have to choose between income and impact if you want a career. And that isolates people, and we don't get the best of them when that's the case. And so what's so exciting to me is what I started off thinking we just really need to make some better choices for our world and our environment and humanity. And I thought, okay, so how do we use these 90,000 hours for good? Well, it's difficult if you are sort of being told to do it, that it's your obligation, that you're forced to do it, or you have to do it. It's different when you can feel really intrinsically motivated. And that's actually been the gift of the book for me, is I have found so many interesting stories where people's lives are so much richer and more fulfilled because of this work that they're doing. And part of that equation is the income.
I really love that you talk about this because it resonates. I'm sure it's going to resonate with so many in our audience because it certainly resonates with me. We have many who have pivoted from corporate to nonprofit and also nonprofit to corporate, which was the pivot that I did. And sometimes it is related to income and sometimes it's related to burnout. So we see people sometimes that burn out in corporate and end up in nonprofit roles only to realize those are actually often high burnout rates too. There's this kind of myth, I think, in the corporate world that people in nonprofit don't work very hard. And then it's like when you get in there, you realize, oh my gosh, it was actually easier in the corporate world, especially international disaster relief and development, which I worked in the tsunami. I've never worked harder in my life than I worked in tsunami relief. But, and so I think that if you're facing a situation where you're doing good work and then also not being compensated well, or your benefits don't match what you need to live a flourishing life, then we do see this kind of thing happen quite a bit. I would be really interested, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear this, and I do hope that everybody buys this book because I think you're going to love it, Work That's Worth It. But would you share a story of a career of someone that you think matches these two things well?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say like the flagship story that I have in the book is a story from a company called Virta Health. And the founder, it wasn't his first startup, but he is a successful founder and an incredibly ambitious human. And he is also a triathlete. And he realized during one of his blood work tests, even at the peak of his fitness in his 30s, while he was doing triathlons and everything else, that he was about to enter into prediabetes phase of like on blood work where they're testing your A1C. And he became really interested in how he could control that with diet. And so he was able to reverse that for himself. And he thought there has to be a business behind this. And what's really unique about him is he thinks incredibly big. So he says, if 95% of the people think you're crazy, you're at the right number. And so when I actually wrote the book, he was trying to reverse diabetes in 100 million people. When I got the approval on the copy that we put in the book, he scratched it out and he said, it's now to reverse diabetes and obesity in 1 billion people. Because I thought like the 100 million people was a pretty big number, and it was now 1 billion people. So his company sells a service which has some coaching, some access to doctors, some tools that help people manage diabetes and obesity from their homes and educates them and gives them support. And they sell to businesses so that companies' employees are healthier and they have options for their employees. So it's a B2B mostly. So companies get more, they benefit because their employees are healthier, they can work longer, they're less distracted with needing to go to doctor's visits and everything else, and the individual benefits. So it's a win-win-win. It's a unicorn company, and it's one of those examples where there is no compromise. The better he does, he's not in it for financial reasons, he's already made money, but the better the company does, the more money everybody makes, and the better the world is for it. And so sometimes we think of doing good, how can you charge for it? But in this case, it just allows him to scale to 1 billion, and that's really important. But there are lots of examples in the book, and I really tried to get a variety of different genders, people from all different parts of the globe, consulting firms to solopreneurs to entrepreneurs to law firm. I include in there that the law firm is called Client Earth, and they represent the earth as their client. And so there are all sorts of different examples where you are able to combine income and impact. And the reality is sometimes there is a compromise, and sometimes you do step off a high-performing career ladder, like let's say it's in banking, consulting, or in a traditional law firm. To combine the impact piece may mean you take slightly less of a salary. But the benefits you're getting, I think of compensation as what's giving you energy to keep going. And the benefits may be travel into beautiful places that you really value, meeting with people that you care about, working around people who share common values to you, working with a role model that is so inspiring, that adds value to your life. There's lots of different ways we can get compensated for our work, and it's being aware of those as well and what matters to you so that you can last your 90,000 hours.
Such a great way to word all of that. And I think any of you listening, you probably resonate with that if you've worked any length of time, and even more than one organization particularly, we can compare the two. But not all benefits are the same for everyone. So everybody's so unique. And that's sort of the point of this podcast. We bring our differences here and show up as ourselves. And so maybe somebody who is young and wanting to start a family, but not quite yet because they're wanting to build their career, being able to freeze their eggs, that benefit would be really helpful for them. And so they want to work in a place where that is provided because it's not cheap and it's not affordable for most people otherwise in the United States. Or it could be, like you mentioned, the ability to travel. Some people hate traveling. These aren't really my people. I don't know who these people are. They're certainly probably not.
A young family and
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Well, I traveled with young kids, and we have all kinds of stories about trans-Pacific flights with little ones. I was pregnant with twins and had a very wild, active 3-year-old on one flight. And then even after the twins were born and they were 6 months old and I was exclusively nursing them and had to do like the whole across the world situation. So I've certainly done my fair share of that, but I realize it's not for everyone and it's certainly not easy. So I understand why people don't travel sometimes with little ones. But I had the advantage of Asian airlines, which are much more child friendly. So that's my plug for all Asian airlines, especially Singapore Airlines. They do not sponsor this podcast, but I would always welcome that. But yes, it's such a fascinating conversation because I think as somebody who works in talent development, I understand this not only for myself personally, but from people who are applying to different jobs. We always have people ask about benefits when they're coming in, from our executives to our individual contributors. This is important in the world we work in. We're recording this in the United States of America, where medical insurance is a huge thing because we have not handled it well in the United States and we still are not handling it well. So many people are working in jobs just for a robust type of medical insurance, which would otherwise be impossible.
Yeah, and I think your point is really important. And this is one of the other sort of problems I had to solve in writing this book, because when I first started writing it, I was like, wait, am I now the police of what is impact and what's a meaningful contribution? And that definitely didn't sit right with me. And for the reason that you said, is everybody has their own perspective and value system, and we start in different places in life. And so what is realistic for one person may not be realistic for another. And so, something like teaching, systemically, we know that teachers are grossly underpaid for the work that they do. That doesn't mean all teachers are not rewarded sufficiently for that work, because I've also met teachers that say, it's the perfect job for me. I get all the summer off, I get to go be with my family, and that is something really important to them. But we can tell systemically that most teachers feel undervalued and underpaid for their work, but it doesn't mean that it's all teachers. So I just think that asking people those questions of what is going to give you the energy to keep you focused and excited about doing this work, and then really understanding what can be offered to that person so that they are inspired.
Yes. And I think that organizations, I hope, because of the push of these generations, because of what Gen X has brought, what the millennials have brought, what Gen Z is now bringing. It'll be interesting to see what Gen Alpha brings into the workforce eventually. I'm seeing companies like Adobe here in San Jose will give certain individuals a sabbatical. I think it's maybe after 5 years at a certain level. And so, that would be really important for some people. And I wonder if some teachers might end up going that route, just for the sabbatical piece being something very helpful for them in their summers. But it is interesting how, organizations and institutions and corporations have personalities just like people do. And so founders often set the tone, just like you mentioned, this man, of what it's going to be like. Many young professionals feel paralyzed, though. They feel like they're at a career crossroads between stability and purpose. And so what advice do you have for those who are trying to navigate that tension without really losing themselves and their values in the process?
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I've been talking with a lot of students on campuses lately, especially with the book launch, and the stress level is super high. These students, to get into colleges even, have had to jump through so many hurdles to even make a compelling application. And the 4 years in college, when you and I were in college, it was a time where you could explore so much of yourself. And on the summers, you could go try any things. You could even go backpacking somewhere, or, take a semester off and go work in a ski mountain or whatever it was. But we all knew people who were doing really interesting things, and the young people today are being pressured they arrive on campus in September, their freshman year, and they are expected to already be applying to the banking consulting clubs to see if they can even get accepted into those so early on. And we're putting this incredibly narrow funnel for success on these youngsters. And so by the time they graduate, the hurdles are not over. And especially in today's world, I actually am about to go give a talk at Stanford. And I was thinking about when I graduated in 1994 from Berkeley, the market was in a very tricky situation. We didn't know that we were about to experience all this web growth and tech growth, but it was a hard time. And then also when I graduated business school was 2001, and it was another time that all of a sudden all the dot-com bubble had burst. And it was another time that a lot of people had offers rescinded, and even consulting firms that had made offers to people made people wait 9 months or a year before their start date. So I know a lot of ambitious young people are experiencing a lot of silence from companies. And I think we've got, obviously the tariffs, and we've got AI, like nobody's really sure. Small businesses are confused. And all businesses feel confused on hiring. But I think what I was thinking about meeting these students, and what is important is to think of every job as a stepping stone to get you closer to something that really feels aligned and what you care about. And especially when you begin, there's so many aspects of your career that you still need to build. And so where can you find the opportunity to begin building? And I think your first 10 years of work, the main goal is to experiment. And I don't mean experiment as in hop jobs every 6 months. I mean, raise your hand for projects within the company that you are in and meet different people, try different departments, even if it's organizing like a softball team with, in the company, but find ways to connect with people outside your area so that you can get exposure to more opportunities and build more skills, and then start to find what really resonates with you, what gets you excited, where do you shine. And so I think often when you are young, you feel this pressure to find the perfect job, like you had to find the perfect college, or this, everyone asks, like, after high school, like, where are you going to college? As if that is like a huge symbol of status, of like how well you've done. And then they ask after you graduate, now what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? And nobody is sort of asking, what do you care about? And so you can start to feel pretty confined that you've got to pick a lane pretty quickly. And I would just say, it's a long game. You've got 90,000 hours. Where are the openings that you can get an opening? And there's something that happens after that first job. And I don't know if this was like it for you, but I remember feeling really unsure post-rubric world exactly how, if I was going to be successful, if I was going to be able to shine in a workforce. And I had mastered the college game and I had a good GPA, but how was I going to do in the real world? And I think what happened is you start working and you realize one day there's like a confidence switch that happens that just sort of gets turned on, and you all of a sudden realize, you know what, showing up, looking people in the eye, remembering stories about their life, meeting deadlines, like all this actually sets you apart quite quickly. And you realize then that actually now I have some agency to think about exactly how I want to direct it and look for the right opportunity and the right time to move in a direction that is even more aligned. But often we need to just get started and have a chance for that confidence switch to happen before you're ready.
Wow, that is so insightful. And I think that many people listening will probably relate to that, because so many jobs I have had in my career, I would say the majority of them have been who I knew. It's like often who you know. And so I hear this again and again. And I hear it more often from women. I'm not saying this doesn't happen for men at all, but you mentioned earlier, like little girls. I mean, Greta Thunberg is such an example of something that's been different and disruptive, because I think wherever I've lived in the world, little girls are often raised with, nuance in each culture to be good girls and to obey the rules and to get the good grades, assuming you're in a country where women's education is valued and they put money and effort toward that. And that was certainly my story, getting all the good grades, getting honor roll, being the leader. And then you get out of college, or out of my master's degree was sort of where I first noticed it in my first role. It's different when you get into the world of the workforce, because it's not about who gets the best grades. It's a whole other game. You're in a game you don't realize you're in. And you can have great relationship building skills, but there are differences in how men and women are being perceived, in addition to the fact that boys and girls are raised differently. Boys from the youngest of ages are being asked these big vision questions. What are you going to do with your great life kind of thing? Like, what are you, and they're more, here's your wide open space to play. Whereas girls get praised for sitting down and looking pretty and being quiet and following the rules. But disruptors by nature aren't born that way, right? And so you have to find your way into how do you show up? And that is a thing everybody's navigating in a different way, I think, in the workforce, that school and work can be vastly different. Where I see them being the same in Silicon Valley, however, I will say, is having kids that I've been raising here, at least in the high school years when we moved from Singapore, is that growing up in Silicon Valley is a lot of pressure. So they're facing it when they get to college, like you mentioned, and there is this whole thing, where are you going? Even in the pandemic when people weren't going, right? Everything was shut down. But there's this documentary called Race to Nowhere, you may have heard of it, where the pressure on these Silicon Valley kids is so intense. And in the end, when you've worked a long enough career, you start to realize, the valedictorians aren't always the ones doing these things that we were told they would do, because maybe they we're so into following the rules and getting the good grades that system is different in real life in the world. So what kind of advice would you give either to these young people listening that are in that kind of early phase, or maybe to some of these parents who are helping their young kids start to go to college and figure this out?
Yeah, I don't have the exact statistics, but I'm going to give you approximation. So most kids enter college knowing 3 to 5 careers. That is usually their parents, an aunt, uncle, like somebody, maybe they're in a family of lawyers, a family of doctors or nurses. So they have a very narrow range of what's even possible. By the time they graduate, it's maybe like 12 to 15 careers that they know. The difference is the people who've recruited on campus. Who gets to recruit on campus? The people who can pay to recruit on campus. So my advice is start learning about everybody else in the middle. Most people don't work at the companies that you already know about or in the fields you already know about. So start being curious and asking people and their parents maybe what they do. And I think once you realize that the limited funnels that you have been exposed to are just such a small portion of the jobs that most people have, it changes everything. And I was just talking to a young student who felt incredibly stressed. Actually, this is about 3 months ago, before he was graduating, because he did not get an offer from the consulting firm that he had worked in the summer before. He thought he was going to get an offer and he made it to the final round and he didn't. And he was feeling so stressed to be graduating without a job locked in. And we had the conversation of, do you know how most companies hire? And he said, I don't know. And I said, they hire when the job's open. It's 3 months out. They're not hiring right now. It's like an apartment. They don't advertise way in advance for the most part. They advertise when the apartment's available. And so I think starting to realize how the real world works is you're no longer on a rubric. And what's important is redefining your own version of success and looking for people who you have a similar value system to. Not perspective, because perspective could ideally surround yourself by people with all different perspectives, but try identify people with a similar value system who look like they have a definition of success that resonates with you, and start to find out more about what they do and how they got there.
Love that. That's such great advice. Even just job shadowing for a day. Yeah,
and I interviewed a young woman recently who is a Gen Zer, and she is an immigrant from Brazil, lives in Canada, and after university, she needed a corporate job for a sponsorship of a visa. She did a training program that exposed her to all different departments, and it was like a less sexy company. It's a big financial services insurance company. But what ended up happening is she got to build the sustainability department for the company. So she is 26, maybe 27 now. And she's running this whole sustainability group, which the older people in the company don't have enough experience to do or training to do. And so there are all sorts of advantages that young people are going to have if they can get access. And AI is another one. Even though AI is changing so fast and the people graduating today don't have all the knowledge that they're going to need to implement during their careers, what they do have is incredible flexibility and aptitudes for technology, way more than our generation. So what might take us several weeks to even grasp and understand, for them, it's really intuitive. So there's not a company out there that's not going to shift how people work within the company. So in some ways, like when I started back in 1994, I ended up graduating right as we were starting to use email and check sources online. So in the time of the World Wide Web. And I remember taking a class. I was working down in San Mateo in the tech industry, and I was taking a class down at Stanford at night in basically how to build a website and why you should have a website for your business. And I was one of the youngest employees, but I would come back and then teach all the marketing managers and directors why it was important and how it was relevant. And so also, not only is it hard to get started right now, but just keep perspective that you actually may be the most valuable employee faster than any other generation if you can play it right. And so be willing to be a beginner. Look for the opportunities, and if you can focus on how to be helpful, then I think always the opportunities open up.
Great advice. We'll have a little quick lightning round for us to finish this off. So you ready?
I hope so.
Whatever's on the top of your head. Early career internships, worth it or not?
Worth it.
Quitting a job without a backup plan.
You have to be financially secure to do that.
Yeah. MBA programs for impact-driven careers.
Depends.
LinkedIn networking messages, overrated or essential?
Very important.
What should a big first purchase be after your first paycheck?
Your first big purchase, I think it depends. I mean, you may need a car for transportation.
Yes, exactly.
Housing in the city. So I don't know. Those are the big ones. But I would say don't forget to celebrate. So take yourself out for a nice meal.
That's a really good one. And do you have a go-to song or podcast you listen to when you need a boost of courage?
I mean, lately I've been listening to Bob Dylan.
Love him.
Which, I have a teenage daughter, and she has with Timothy Chalamet in, I forget what the movie is called, but the one
so
where
good. A place unknown.
Yeah,
something like it was such a good movie. Yeah,
it was a great movie. So she's been listening to it, and I listened to it a lot as a teenager as well. And it felt retro in my days, but now really feels retro. But yeah, that is, I don't know. There's one that, like, the times they are changing, and like you think of a lot of these words, they are representative through generations.
100%. This is where the boomers and the Gen Z connect. So my kids connect with my parents in a very special way. The hippie generation, they saw these. Well, just through the changes in society and the need for protest, the need for standing up for rights, music, revolutionary type disruption. I think that the Vietnam War and hippie generation has a lot in common.
Back to Disruptors. There's a line in a song, I might be Jethro Tull, but I can't remember, but it's from the 70s, and it says, "I'd love to change the world, but I don't know what to do, so I'll leave it up to you." And that line has just always sunk really deep for me, because we don't have enough yous. And so part of what I do is I'm trying to intrinsically motivate more people to be the ones that are willing to change the world.
Well, you're doing an excellent job. So thank you for sharing yourself with us today, your journey, your research, what you've learned. It's been very inspiring and very motivating. Everybody go out and buy work that's worth it. You will enjoy this book, and I would love to hear what you have to say about it. And if you're sharing it in your book clubs or with each other, let us know. Thanks for being on the show today, Georgie.
Thanks so much, Lori, for having me.
All right, difference makers, that was Georgi Enthoven. And if you're anything like me, you're already thinking about what you can do to make your work more meaningful, more impactful, and more you. Here's the deal. You're not in this alone. You're part of this global community of difference makers, and I want to hear from you. DM me on Instagram, leave a comment on my LinkedIn, message me at loriadamsround.com, or better yet, join the conversation over on Patreon, where we go even deeper, if you can imagine, with Georgi, and she talks about a career decision she made that went against what she was told to do. And it is full of caring for herself, being a disruptor in some of the best, most courageous ways, and understanding that human-centered leadership is the gig. I don't want you to miss it, because it was incredibly impactful. Join us over on Patreon, you difference makers, where you can have an exclusive Q&A about this session with her, and you can watch this video and then ask any question you want from me or anybody else in our difference maker community about how they were impacted by this particular episode. So go over to patreon.com/aworldofdifference, and you will sign up and be able to receive every new exclusive episode that comes out there in our difference maker community when you join today. And hey, if this episode lit a fire under you, share it with those 5 people that you know in your life need to hear it. Text it to a friend who's stuck in a job that doesn't light them up. Post it on your story. Bring someone else into this movement to understand that when it comes to making an impact, having a salary and benefits that help you live the life you want while you're making an impact, it really does make a difference. And so if this conversation has made you think of 5 different people, don't hesitate, send it to them today. Or make a little group of friends, put it in a text thread, and everybody listen and come together and talk about how you're going to make changes in your own life, because you are trying to make an impact in the world. And the way you are being cared for in your job is something that you also deserve while you make an impact. You're only human after all. Please lean into your humanity and let's care for each other, because preventing burnout, as I often say, is a collective responsibility. You're not in this by yourself, but a lot of us are in industries that are high burnout industries, whether it's international relief and development, tech, or all kinds of industries like education where you're teaching those kids, and it is hard. So please share this episode with anybody you think should hear it. And if you haven't already, please take 30 seconds to rate and review this podcast. That small act helps others just like you find this show. We need each other and we belong to each other. And sometimes all it takes to make a difference is saying yes when someone asks for help. I'm asking, and I know you'll show up. Until next time, keep showing up, keep using your voice, and keep making a world of difference. Before we go, I just want to take a moment to thank you. Yes, you. The fact that you're here, tuning in, leaning into these conversations, and doing the hard and beautiful work of making a difference in this world, it means everything to me. In this episode, if it spoke to you, if it brought you healing, hope, or even just a new perspective, I'd love for you to help us spread the word. Subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone you think might need to hear it. Your support helps this community grow and also helps us to keep having these important conversations. You are such a vital part of this journey. And every time you listen, every time you share, you remind me of why we do this, because you are out there making a difference in your own beautiful, messy, and imperfect way. And that matters more than you know. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for making the world a little brighter, a little kinder, and a little more whole. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep making a difference. You are loved. All right, listen up, because this can change your life. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or just not yourself lately, I need you to hear this. You don't have to go through it alone. Life is hard. Career pivots, relationships, stress, big decisions. It's a lot. And let's be real. Sometimes your best friend or your journal just isn't enough. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp is online therapy that actually works for your life. No awkward waiting rooms, no commute, just licensed professional support from the comfort of your own home on your schedule. Whether you need help processing a big change, setting boundaries, or just getting unstuck, you'll be matched with a therapist that fits your needs. Here's the best part. As a listener of A World of Difference, you get 10% off your first month. Just head over to www.betterhelp.com/difference. That's www.betterhelp.com/difference to get started today. Look, your mental health is everything. You deserve support. You deserve all the healing. You deserve to feel better. So don't wait. Go to www.betterhelp.com/difference and take that first step for your healing today.